I see some conversations online where people are pissed that someone's coming to see them and they don't come with their own food. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of It's That Deep Pod. I hope you're well. I hope you're feeling good. I'm feeling good, to be very honest. I'm recording 2 episodes in one day, so the way I felt in the last episode is how I still feel now. Today's episode, I've been thinking about the inconvenience of friendships a lot, and coincidentally, there's been like a lot of conversations around the inconvenience of friendships. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Lately, I've kind of found myself in need of people in different ways and in different capacities. When I was living in Lagos, Nigeria, I never really thought of myself as someone that needed people. I just had friends that were available to me in different ways. And it wasn't a thing where I kind of had to think of asking. It has made me think of how inconvenience and capacity are kind of intertwined or kind of connected when you talk about friendships. So I had a procedure that I needed an escort for. And I remember that day they were like, oh, you can't come in if you don't have someone to escort you to this procedure. And being in a new city and just thinking of it, I was like, dang, I don't really have, it's such a huge contrast from my life in Lagos where I could call how many people to kind of come with me and help. And at worst case scenario, I could even just get like my driver to help me. Coming into this place, I was thinking of what need felt like for me and what vulnerability felt like for me in this situation. And, I ended up having my friend come over from another state, actually, another country. What am I even saying? To come and spend time with me. I will always be grateful to this person. I've always had the idea that inconvenience was a part of life, which is, I think it's strange, but growing up in Nigeria, growing up in a place where community was more of like the first thing, I grew up around people just kind of inconveniencing themselves in a healthy way. And I want to say that the key word here is healthy, in a healthy way for family, in a healthy way for friends. And so when I'm seeing the conversations now around inconvenience, it's like, it's just such a culture shock for me. And also just a contrast in the way that I'm also understanding what adults and adulting can kind of feel like in the ways that we look at friendships. As I said, I think inconvenience and capacity are they always come into play in the same kind of conversations that we're having. But while recognizing this, I think that the cost of true friendships and what it demands is it's kind of lost on everyone, I think. I feel like what people call friendships now, based on the, mainstream conversations that are going around, most people don't understand the cost of what true friendship actually requires and how, it's not always going to be chummy. Like sometimes it is inconveniencing. If you're someone that is intentionally trying to be a friend, a good friend, whatever good means to you, but also whatever good means to God. And I think that's something that we need to constantly have at the back of our minds, right? I'm just going to say in this episode, we might hear the word inconvenience a little bit. So please don't be pissed at me. I just don't know. That's the best way I can kind of present this to you guys, okay? As I was saying, I think that inconvenience is something that is a given in most of the relationships that you're trying to intentionally build. And I think where the issue comes into play is where people attach romantic relationships as more worthy of inconvenience, than your friendships or than your platonic relationships. So in your brain, something is worthy of your time and worthy of your inconvenience when you're getting something in return in whatever capacity, sexually, physically, monetarily, whatever. And I think a lot of times in friendships, people don't feel like they're gaining anything. So why should they inconvenience themselves? And I think that mentality is where we also need to question, right? Because you are gaining so much in your friendship, period. Like just having someone that you can rely on, having someone that you feel safe with, having someone that you can banter with, chat with, that will show up for you when you're doing something, that will pray with you, that will pray for you, that you can, rant to and be vulnerable with, that has a different understanding that is so much value and that is so much gain, right? And sometimes we think that gain has to be tangible. You have to feel it and touch it in order for it to be valuable. And it's a faulty kind of thinking, because a lot of times, even with our relationship with Christ, you cannot necessarily weigh God's love for you. Like, it's not something you can grab and say, it is worth $50,000. It's not. It is beyond comprehension, right? And I think that that's how God is also asking us to look at love and friendship with people. You can't put a number on love and the ways that people show up for you and the ways that someone understands you and is able to get your humor and able to spend time with you and show up for you. You can't put a number on it. And that's how we can kind of reconstruct how we view inconvenience and view what is worthy of inconvenience, right? In this culture and where I'm at, I'm currently in the US, I'm currently in New York, individualism is kind of promoted a little bit more. And I think systems are created to even help you be more individualistic, more isolated. And so you have friendships where it's just like we hang out, we just chill, we catch up. But I don't know anything about you, really. Don't call me when you need to move. Don't call me when you need like last minute stuff. That's why I think that people feel lonely and feel like they don't want to come off as needy. They don't want to come off as the person that has all these issues. Because people know what something requires, it kind of makes them avoid it a little bit more. So when we know and when we accept, or when we come into acceptance of the fact that inconvenience is kind of a given in most of the relationships that you intend to value or intend to build and nurture, and in most of the ways that God is asking us to love, we then now think of, okay, how is this inconvenience and what is inconvenience and what is abuse, So because inconvenience is not abuse, it is not constantly dismissing yourself in order to please other people. It's not, being in a toxic situation. That's not what it is. We're talking about the healthy forms of inconvenience and understanding that sometimes you have to inconvenience yourself to have a conversation. You have to inconvenience yourself to be truthful and tell your friend the truth. You inconvenience yourself to compromise rather than constantly waiting for people to meet you where you are and feeling like you don't have to do any work on your own to nurture your friendships, not constantly choosing comforts, You inconvenience yourself to pick people up from the airport. You inconvenience yourself to spend an extra hour with your friend because you know that person needs it. Like, these are some forms of inconvenience. And that's why I keep saying, like, we cannot have one structured view of what inconvenience is. Like, oh yeah, my friend asked me to move. Like, that's so inconveniencing. Yeah, sometimes like it requires that. It requires you helping them pack a little bit. It requires you asking, like, is there any way that you need me? That is what friendship is. And thinking of it that, not only because you might need it one day, but because that's how you love people. But also it is recognizing capacity and being able to communicate that. Because I think that sometimes we have conversations in such a black and white way. We're like, oh yeah, but I'm so drained. I'm so tired. I don't have capacity. And like, I'm anxious and I'm an introvert and all these things. And while all these things are valid, they are very valid. Inconvenience does not mean that you have to change who you are to please someone else. It could look like you compromising in some way, communicating that, hey, you know what, I want to be here for you, but I'm really not at capacity to be. So is there any other way I can show my love for you in this situation? I just think sometimes like we crave comfort way too much, and comfort is an idol. We just want to be so comfortable in the way that we are. Like, oh yeah, I'm an introvert and I don't communicate. But most of the time, I think in friendships is where people just feel like it's not worth it. And it's sad. It's very sad to see, because these people, sometimes the people that say that they're introverts and please, this is not an attack on introverts at all. Okay. I think it's just an example, and I'm going to try and find other examples to use. But, sometimes people say, okay, I don't text. I don't like texting at all. And when they're in a relationship, in a romantic relationship, you find them texting. And I'm like, wait, from where to where? how did it get here? And I think it's just where value, you place value. And sometimes when you relate to people that value romantic relationships above friendships, you end up feeling a bit frustrated just because it's like, so you can do it. It's just that you don't feel like your friendship is worth doing it for. I think that healthy friendship shouldn't be that way. You should feel safe enough, and you should kind of nurture an environment where you feel safe enough and where you can ask for things and without seeing yourself as too needy. In that nurturing, that's where inconvenience comes in. It's work. It is work. It is not always going to be surface level. Nurturing requires time. It requires intentionality. And so if you're constantly seeking comfort, if you're constantly seeking, oh yeah, we're hanging out over wine all the time, and, it has to be in this cute setting and whatnot. If that's your only idea of friendship, then how can you pray for God to kind of rework your mindset around the way you view these relationships? Like Jesus had friends, and there were times where it was really hard. Okay, it was really hard for him. Imagine if Peter was like, this Jesus, even denied him. He still denied him, but at least he stayed with him. Just thinking about the entirety of their relationship and the journey that they went through, and being able to eat together, but also being able to pray together and being able to talk about the hard days together. Imagine if they were just like, this Jesus is too much. It's too much. Then what would be the point? What would be the whole point of their journey? That's something we need to think about. I think if you're someone that wants to be better, that wants to try to learn more and evolve and grow, and also just wanting to be more like who Christ wants you to be, I think love is inconveniencing. It's the truth. Like if you read about love in the Bible, it is inconveniencing. In a romantic way, in your family, in everything, it is inconveniencing in most of the ways. There are so many times that you do have to kind of take yourself out of the picture and ask God, like, what is he requiring of you right now? And there are times where God is asking you to rest. There are times where God is asking you to, like, no, you can't do this. Like, that's not what I'm asking you to do. That's not the way I need you to show up right now. You need to take some time off. Yeah. And so if you're on the other end where you feel like you hesitate to ask for help because you don't want to come off as needy, I want to challenge you to do it anyway, because it shows you the people that see you as needy and people that don't. It shows you the people that are willing to show up for you and people that aren't. And that doesn't mean that it's a room for you to take offense, because that's not what this is. I think it is more about understanding and having a different perspective of what capacity can look like, but also what inconvenience can look like. And understanding that in everything, you letting go of yourself and your needs doesn't serve you in any way. It doesn't give you what you want. It doesn't give you a desired outcome. It's not going to give you the friendships that you want. You know that deep down in your heart, you want people that you can call on and say, oh yeah, I'm going to the hospital on this day. Can you please come with me? And you feel safe enough because you know that they can take a day off for you. They can take a day off to be with you in the hospital. If you know that that's a desire that you have and you're not attaching that to just romantic relationships, that's something that you have to accept about yourself and understand that you have to ask. When you recognize capacity, you have little to no room for offense in your life. On either end, you needing it and you giving it. It's like you're giving it because you love. You're inconveniencing yourself because you love, and you are receiving because you are loved. You know that it can come about in different ways. And you also know that by God's grace, there's abundance and there are more people that can show up for you. I know that we're in a time where like routines are so important, and we like any tiny disruption to our routine just kind of makes us feel like, oh, we're not productive enough. Was in such a productive era. And I feel like sometimes a tiny shift, yes, it disrupts your routine, but love in a way is disruptive. I think when we create routines, it will be helpful, or it might be helpful if we create some room for disruption. You can, and this can happen in your romantic relationships. So if you're someone that values romantic relationships above friendships, I just want you to have that in mind as well, that even in your romantic relationship, disruption occurs. and it brings about some sort of inconvenience. When you create routines and you have boundaries, your boundaries are not existing to keep people away. They're not existing to isolate you. Your boundaries should be healthy. And what's a healthy boundary is that there's room for a little bit of flexibility. There's room for a little bit of disruption. There are things that you know that both parties did not plan for. I just feel like it shouldn't feel like so much stress to do a simple favor. It shouldn't feel like so much stress for someone to say, can you come with me to this? I want to shop for this. Like, it shouldn't feel like such a hassle. I just feel like sometimes we're having deep conversations, like we're literally extending conversations around, can you pick me up from the airport, or can you take me to the airport, when like you should be offering your friends. You should say, what time are you going? Like, do you want me to drop you off at the airport if you have a car? We make people feel so bad for wanting your time. It's like, how dare you want my time? But isn't that friendship? Like, how do you build a relationship with someone if you don't spend time with that person, if you don't create time with that person, if you don't inconvenience yourself in some ways? It doesn't have to be everything that you like. I see some conversations online where people are pissed that someone is coming to see them and they don't come with their own food. The little things, the $5, the $10 that you're so hung up about is something that is part of the sacrificial love that you give. My knowledge of my relationship with Christ does not encourage you putting yourself in dangerous situations in order to please other people or in the name of compromise. But the more you lean into the knowledge of Christ, the more you lean into your relationship with Christ and the ways that he wants you to love, I think you lean into the ideas of like less about guilt, but more about love. Because there's guilt that makes us feel like we need to inconvenience ourselves all the time for other people. But there's love where you know that, this is worth the memory that I'm going to have with this person for the next how many years, whatever, is worth the time, is worth the disruption. I read somewhere that friendship is love and service and joy. And yes, sometimes it means sharing someone's pain. You know what? I pray that love finds you. I pray that grace exists in all your friendships and in different capacities and in different ways and different dynamics. I pray that you're not so focused on yourself that you lose sight of the reasons for the relationships that God has placed in your life, the relationships that God has given you to nurture. I pray that you don't lose sight of the love that pleases God. I pray that when you need, you find people that will be there for you, and people that are ready to show up for you, that are able to show up for you. And I pray that you're ready and able to show up for people as well, that God mends your heart, it molds your heart to look at inconvenience in a way that he wants you to look at it in a healthy way, and being able to be there in the way that honors him and honors your friendships. Okay, so my random thing for this episode is this book. The title is His Only Wife. I love this book. This is one of my favorite books ever. It was a gift, and oh gosh, I love this book so much. I don't even know how to express it. This is the only book I've read in a day, and I could not drop this book. When people say they couldn't put it down, I've never actually understood what that felt like. And this book made me understand it. I wanted to get to the end so bad. The storytelling, the characters, I love it so much. So if you are into, like, if you're for the girls, if you're for the women, if you're for empowerment and just understanding the vulnerability that comes in wanting to be loved and feeling like you found something and being confused in it, but also choosing yourself, this book is for you. Okay, please go and read this book if you're into reading. I have the physical one, but also I think you can find it on Libby. Libby is like an app where you have to have a library card and you download books on there and you're able to read and whatnot. So obviously he's an African author. Amazing book. I cannot recommend this enough. When I go to some bookstores, I'm like, you guys don't have this book. As part of you need to have this book in stock. Okay. People need to find this book everywhere. So that's my random thing for the week or for this episode. And I hope you guys enjoyed listening. I love you so much. And I mean it. I feel like when I say I love you, it sounds very cliche, but I really do. Thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to actually listen to any of the episodes. And don't forget to leave your comments. I always forget to say that, but you guys, please leave comments, rate the podcast, review, whatever rocks your boats. Just, interact and follow on Instagram at It's That Deep Pod. All the details will be in the show notes below. But I love you so much, like I said, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.